Our tactical team observes a profound irony unfolding in the heart of Brooklyn, where the man who once commanded 31 rooms of marble and mahogany in the Miraflores Palace now commands precisely 84 square feet of poured concrete. The transition occurred with such velocity that even our most seasoned analysts struggled to catalog the sheer magnitude of the fall. One moment, Nicolas Maduro sat beneath gold-leafed ceilings where each chandelier cost more than the average Venezuelan earned in a lifetime. The next, he became prisoner 001, a designation that strips away not just power, but the very architecture of identity itself. The Metropolitan Detention Center Brooklyn does not announce itself with the grandiosity one might expect from a facility housing some of America's most notorious detainees. It squats at the edge of Sunset Park like a brutalist monument to bureaucratic efficiency, a 12-story tower of beige concrete and narrow windows that seems designed not to imprison, but to erase. Our architectural consultants note that the facility was never meant to be a long-term correctional institution. It was designed as a holding pen, a way station for souls in transit between freedom and federal sentencing. Yet it has become something far more sinister, a laboratory for the systematic dismantling of human relevance. The North Building, where Maduro now resides, presents a masterclass in psychological architecture. The designers understood something fundamental about power and its dissolution. They built a structure where windows exist not to provide views, but to remind inmates of their irrelevance. The openings are 4 inches wide, reinforced with steel mesh so fine that sunlight arrives pre-filtered, stripped of warmth, reduced to a gray suggestion of the world beyond. Our technical team calculated that the average cell receives approximately 12% of the natural light that penetrated the windows of the Miraflores Palace. This is not accidental. This is engineered insignificance. He wanted to be the master of his destiny, the lion of Bolivarian socialism, the heir to Chavez's revolutionary fire. Now he is the master of a stainless steel toilet bolted to a concrete wall, a fixture that doubles as a sink through a design innovation that prison architects call efficiency, and human rights observers call something considerably less flattering. The toilet does not flush with a handle. It operates via a button mounted on the wall, timed to release water for precisely 3.7 seconds. Our consultants confirm this duration was calculated to provide the minimum necessary for sanitation, while maximizing the psychological reminder that even basic bodily functions occur at the discretion of the state. The cell itself measures 7 feet by 12 feet, though these dimensions become somewhat academic when one considers that the steel bed frame consumes nearly 1/3 of the available floor space. The mattress is 4 inches thick, composed of a fire-retardant foam that our materials analysts describe as possessing the approximate comfort of a gym mat left in the sun. There is a desk, if one can call it that, a steel protrusion from the wall with rounded edges to prevent weaponization. There is a stool, similarly embedded. The walls are painted a shade of beige that our color theory experts note was specifically chosen for its psychological neutrality, a tone so devoid of character that the eye refuses to remember it. But the true genius of the MDC Brooklyn lies not in what it contains, but in what it withholds. The special housing unit where Maduro resides operates under a protocol that transforms incarceration from a physical reality into an epistemological condition. He exists in a state that our legal team describes as enforced non-being, a status where the prisoner is simultaneously present and deleted, breathing but bureaucratically erased. The fluorescent lights in his cell never turn off. This is not an oversight. This is policy. The tubes emit a frequency of light that our medical consultants confirm disrupts the production of melatonin, the hormone responsible for regulating sleep cycles. Within 72 hours of exposure, the circadian rhythm begins to destabilize. Within a week, the distinction between day and night becomes a matter of abstract knowledge rather than physiological experience. Maduro sleeps when exhaustion overwhelms his system, wakes when his body can no longer sustain unconsciousness, and exists in the intervals in a state that sleep researchers describe as chronic temporal disorientation. This is the architecture of the unperson, a systematic assault on the markers of human continuity. In Caracas, he woke to the sound of guards snapping to attention, the rustle of aides preparing briefings, the distant hum of a city that organized itself around his whims. In Brooklyn, he wakes to silence so complete that our acoustic engineers had to employ specialized equipment to measure it. The walls of the SHU are constructed with sound-dampening concrete, a mixture that includes rubber particles and specific aggregate ratios designed to absorb rather than reflect audio waves. The effect is disorienting. Inmates report that even their own breathing sounds muffled, as though the air itself has been designed to swallow sound. He is 5 miles from Wall Street, from the thundering heart of global capital, from the trading floors where the price of Venezuelan oil is set by algorithms that execute millions of transactions per second. He might as well be on the dark side of the moon. No sound from the Brooklyn streets penetrates his cell. Not the wail of sirens, not the argument of lovers, not the bass thump of music from passing cars. The city that never sleeps surrounds him, but he exists in a pocket of enforced stillness, a bubble of silence that our psychological warfare experts recognize as a classic technique of sensory deprivation. Then there are the special administrative measures, the SAMs, a designation that sounds bureaucratic, and is therefore perfectly suited to disguise its function as a system of informational annihilation. The SAMS protocol is not classified, but it might as well be, given how few Americans understand its implications. It is the government's method for creating what our intelligence community calls a living black site, a zone of controlled non-communication that transforms the inmate into a figure who exists but cannot be confirmed to exist in any meaningful sense. Under SAMS, Maduro cannot speak to his lawyers without an FBI agent present to record every syllable. He cannot receive phone calls except under conditions so restrictive that our legal observers describe them as Kafkaesque theater. He cannot receive newspapers, magazines, or any media that might inform him of the world beyond his cell. He exists in a perpetual present tense, severed from the flow of events, unable to know whether his allies still speak his name or whether he has been forgotten entirely. This is not incarceration. This is deletion with a heartbeat. The government has not merely imprisoned Maduro, it has severed his connection to the informational ecology that sustains human relevance. Our communications experts note that this represents a profound evolution in the technology of punishment. Historically, imprisonment meant physical confinement. The prisoner's body was locked away, but their voice could still escape through letters, through visitors, through the networks of communication that bind humans to the larger world. The SAMS protocol closes these channels. It transforms the prisoner into a signal that cannot transmit, a consciousness that can observe but cannot participate. The controversy here is not subtle, and our analysts do not shy from it. Is this justice? Or have we perfected the art of the 21st century dungeon? The question haunts the legal briefs and the human rights reports, but it does not trouble the Bureau of Prisons, which implements SAMS with the clinical efficiency of an algorithm. From their perspective, Maduro is not being punished excessively, he is being managed. The measures are described as necessary to prevent him from directing criminal activities from inside the facility, from coordinating with allies, from continuing to exert influence. This logic is airtight until one considers that it transforms punishment into a preemptive strike against hypothetical crimes. A guilty verdict rendered not for what was done, but for what might be done. The experts were baffled by his sudden transition to insignificance. In Caracas, Maduro moved through the world surrounded by an elite guard, a security apparatus that consumed millions in annual budget and employed hundreds of personnel trained in counter-assassination, counter-surveillance, and the theatrical projection of invincibility. They wore crisp uniforms, carried H&K submachine guns, communicated through encrypted radios. They were the visible manifestation of his untouchability, the human wall between him and consequence. In Brooklyn, this billion-dollar security apparatus has been replaced by a single corrections officer earning approximately $25 per hour, a man whose primary qualification is a clean background check and a willingness to work the graveyard shift. This officer does not stand at attention. He does not salute. He sits at a desk monitoring a bank of screens showing grainy feeds from the corridor cameras, and his attention drifts between the monitors and his phone with the casual indifference of someone processing an administrative task. This is the ultimate technical defeat, the reduction of power to its most elemental form. One bored human being with a set of keys. Our tactical team conducted a detailed analysis of the security protocols at MDC Brooklyn, and the findings are instructive. The facility does not rely on elite operators or advanced weaponry. It relies on geometry and bureaucracy. The corridors are designed with sightlines that eliminate blind spots. The doors operate on electronically controlled locks that require biometric verification and PIN codes. The system is redundant, layered, and utterly impersonal. There is no commander to bribe, no loyalist to turn. There is only the machine, humming along with the reliability of a distributed network. Maduro cannot stage a daring escape because there is no individual point of failure to exploit. He cannot leverage personal loyalty because the system is designed to function without it. The guards rotate on shifts calibrated to prevent familiarity. The procedures are documented in manuals that run to thousands of pages, each step designed to be executed by anyone with minimal training. This is not security in the traditional sense. This is distributed denial of freedom, a system so banal in its implementation that it achieves through tedium what his elite guard could never guarantee: absolute containment. The science behind his isolation is both elegant and cruel. Our neuroscience consultants confirm that prolonged sensory deprivation produces measurable changes in brain function. The absence of external stimuli forces the brain to generate its own, a process that manifests as hallucinations, time distortions, and a creeping sense of unreality. Inmates in long-term isolation report seeing patterns on blank walls, hearing voices in the silence, losing the ability to distinguish memory from imagination. The brain, starved for input, begins to cannibalize itself, replaying old experiences with increasing distortion until the past becomes a funhouse mirror of what actually occurred. Maduro is not yet at this stage, but the trajectory is clear. The MDC Brooklyn does not need to torture him with electrodes or waterboards. It tortures him with nothing, with the systematic withdrawal of the sensory inputs that anchor human consciousness to shared reality. He cannot see the sun rise, he cannot hear the rain, he cannot smell fresh air or feel wind on his face. He exists in a climate-controlled cube where the temperature is maintained at 68 degrees year-round, where the air is recycled through HEPA filters that strip out not just contaminants, but any olfactory reminder of the world beyond. This is a sensory deprivation chamber disguised as a correctional facility, and our medical ethicists note that the distinction is purely semantic. The effects are identical. The inmate becomes untethered from the rhythms that regulate human existence, adrift in a void where time loses meaning and identity becomes negotiable. The Bureau of Prisons does not call this torture because the definition of torture requires active infliction of suffering. What they have engineered is passive annihilation, a system that produces psychological dissolution through the absence of stimulation rather than its presence. The food arrives 3 times per day on a plastic tray, passed through a slot in the door. Our nutritional analysts reviewed the standard MDC Brooklyn menu and confirmed that it meets the minimum caloric and nutritional requirements established by federal guidelines. The meals are not designed to be enjoyable. They are designed to sustain biological function. Breakfast is typically a portion of processed eggs, a slice of bread, and a carton of milk. Lunch and dinner feature rotating combinations of meat product, starch, and vegetable, all prepared in industrial quantities and served at temperatures that our culinary consultants describe as aggressively lukewarm. The man who once dined on meals prepared by chefs trained in Europe, who sipped wine from bottles whose value exceeded the monthly income of his guards, now eats from a plastic tray with a spork. The spork is a detail worth noting. It is not a fork. It is not a spoon. It is a hybrid utensil designed to be inadequate at both functions, incapable of being sharpened into a weapon, but also incapable of delivering food to the mouth with any dignity. This is not an oversight. This is policy. Every object in the cell has been scrutinized for its potential dual use as an instrument of harm or escape, and the result is an environment where even eating becomes a reminder of powerlessness. He waits in line for this food, a detail that our sociologists note represents a profound inversion of his former existence. In Caracas, people waited for him. Ministers, generals, diplomats arranged their schedules around his availability. Time itself bent to accommodate his whims. In Brooklyn, he waits. He stands in a queue with other inmates, shuffling forward as the line moves, and when he reaches the front, a corrections officer slides the tray through the slot without making eye contact. The transaction takes 7 seconds. There is no ceremony, no acknowledgement. He is not the president. He is not even a name. He is a number, and numbers do not require deference. Our anthropologists observe that this ritualized reduction is central to the function of the modern prison. The system does not merely confine the body. It systematically strips away the social markers that constitute identity. The uniform is identical for all inmates. The routine is identical. The space is identical. The result is a forced equality that obliterates distinction. A democracy of insignificance where the former head of state and the street-level drug dealer exist in the same ontological category. Inmate. The technical failure of power is most visible in the small details, the micro-defeats that accumulate into existential erosion. Maduro cannot adjust the temperature of his cell. He cannot control the lights. He cannot choose when to eat or sleep or shower. Every aspect of his existence is scheduled by a bureaucracy that does not care who he was, only what he is. A logistical problem to be managed with maximum efficiency and minimum cost. The Bureau of Prisons operates on a budget, and every inmate represents a line item. The agency has calculated the precise cost of housing a prisoner in the MDC Brooklyn, and the figure hovers around $63,000 per year. This is not an investment in rehabilitation or reformation. This is the cost of storage, of maintaining a human being in a state of suspended animation until the legal system determines their fate. Maduro is expensive by the standards of his former life, but by the standards of the Bureau of Prisons, he is just another entry in the ledger. Our economists note that this represents the ultimate commodification of a human life, the reduction of existence to a set of inputs and outputs that can be optimized for cost efficiency. The prison does not ask whether he is suffering. It asks whether he is being housed in compliance with the minimum standards established by law. The answer is yes, and therefore the system is functioning correctly. There is no malice here, no sadistic pleasure in his degradation. There is only the grinding indifference of a bureaucracy executing its mandate. As of today, January 19th, our final situation report confirms that Maduro remains in his cell, awaiting trial on charges that could result in a sentence measured in decades. He has been in custody for weeks now, and the initial shock has given way to the numbing routine of institutional life. He wakes to the fluorescent glare. He eats the lukewarm food. He paces the 84 square feet of his cell, 7 steps in one direction, turn, 7 steps back. Our behavioral psychologists calculate that he walks approximately 2 miles per day this way, covering the same ground over and over, a treadmill without motion. He cannot see the Brooklyn streets, but if he could, he would observe a city utterly indifferent to his presence. The bodegas sell their coffee, the subway trains rattle past, the school children argue over basketball brackets. Life continues with the relentless momentum of a system that does not pause for the fallen. Our sociological analysis confirms what common sense suggests. The world is not holding its breath for Nicolás Maduro. The news cycle has moved on. The headlines have shifted to newer crises, fresher scandals. He is yesterday's monster. archived in the public consciousness alongside 1,000 other figures who once seemed impossibly powerful and are now impossibly forgotten. The tragedy, if one can call it that, is not that he fell. Gravity claims everyone, eventually. The tragedy is the thoroughness of his erasure, the clinical efficiency with which the machinery of American justice has transformed him from a geopolitical actor into a case number. He controlled the world's largest proven oil reserves, commanded a nation of 30 million people, shaped the destinies of economies and elections across a continent. Now he controls nothing. He commands no one. He shapes only the air in his lungs as he breathes in the recycled atmosphere of his concrete box. Our intelligence analysts debate whether this outcome was inevitable or engineered, whether Maduro's arrest represents the triumph of international law or the successful execution of a regime change operation by other means. The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the interstitial space between narratives. What is undeniable is that he is here, in Brooklyn, in a cell designed to contain not just his body but his capacity for influence, his ability to project power across distance. The irony that our tactical team observes is this: Maduro spent years railing against American imperialism, denouncing the United States as the Great Satan, intent on destroying Venezuelan sovereignty. He was not wrong about the first part. America did seek his removal, did impose sanctions, did recognize his rival as the legitimate leader. But he was wrong about the mechanism. The Great Satan did not invade with troops or bombers. It did not need to. It simply waited for him to make the mistake of entering a jurisdiction where the long arm of the law could reach him, and then it closed its fingers around his wrist with the cold certainty of a steel trap. This is 21st century statecraft, a form of power projection that requires no aircraft carriers or drone strikes. It requires only patience, legal architecture, and the willingness to enforce consequences on those who mistake rhetoric for immunity. Maduro believed he was untouchable, that his position insulated him from accountability. He learned, as so many have learned before him, that power is a game of perception, and perception can shift with terrifying speed. The concrete walls of his cell do not care about his ideology or his legacy. They do not bend to revolutionary slogans or appeals to anti-imperialist solidarity. They simply are, permanent and indifferent, molecules of cement and aggregate arranged in configurations designed to resist all attempts at escape. Our material scientists confirm that the walls are 18 inches thick, reinforced with rebar in a grid pattern that would require industrial equipment to breach. Maduro could spend the rest of his life chipping away at the concrete with his fingernails and not create a hole large enough to pass a message through. This is the ultimate checkmate, the position on the board where no move leads to advantage. He cannot escape. He cannot communicate freely. He cannot marshal his former resources, because those resources are either frozen, seized, or in the hands of rivals who see no advantage in loyalty to a man in a cell. He is comprehensively defeated, not through some dramatic confrontation, but through the inexorable logic of institutional containment. Our closing observation, delivered with the clinical detachment that characterizes all our assessments, is this: power is fleeting. It accumulates through networks of loyalty, fear, and mutual advantage. It dissipates when those networks dissolve, when the center can no longer offer rewards or threaten consequences. Maduro's power evaporated the moment he could no longer access the levers of state, the moment he became separated from the institutional machinery that transformed his decisions into reality. What remains is a man, stripped of context, reduced to biology and memory, but concrete. Concrete is forever. Long after Maduro has been sentenced and transferred to some federal supermax to serve out his decades, long after the guards who process him have retired and the prosecutors who convicted him have moved on to other cases, the walls of the MDC Brooklyn will remain. They will hold new inmates, contain new falls from grace, witness new lessons in the fragility of human dominance. the institution will persist because institutions are designed to outlast individuals, to grind on, regardless of who passes through their mechanisms. This is not justice in any poetic sense. This is the administrative processing of consequence, the bureaucratic acknowledgement that actions have results and that sovereignty ends at the border. Whether this represents progress or barbarism, enlightenment or the perfection of the dungeon, is a question our team leaves to philosophers and ethicists. We merely observe, document, and report the facts as they unfold in real time. Today, January 19th, prisoner 0801 sits in his cell, perhaps thinking of the 31 rooms he once commanded, perhaps thinking of nothing at all, his mind adrift in the timeless fluorescent void. The machine hums around him, climate-controlled and sensor-monitored, maintaining his biological functions at minimum acceptable standards while systematically deconstructing his psychological coherence. This is the state-of-the-art in modern incarceration, and Nicolas Maduro is receiving its full benefits: every measured lumen of light, every calibrated degree of temperature, every scheduled delivery of nutrition. The world spins on without him, indifferent and relentless. And somewhere in the vast archives of the Bureau of Prisons, a database entry confirms his location, his status, his continued existence as a managed liability. He is accounted for. He is contained. He is, in the most literal sense, handled. And the concrete walls, silent and permanent, require no vindication and offer no comfort. They simply endure as they were designed to do, as they will continue to do long after everyone involved in this story has turned to dust.